I'm Judge Fowler. I'm the Chittenden County Probate Judge, and I've been the Chittenden County Probate Judge for the past 21 years. Before I was the probate judge, I was an I was first an adoptive parent, and then I became, through that process, gradually an adoption attorney. And then I began to represent adoption agencies, and in that process I represented many birth parents who were relinquishing their children for adoption. And I took them through that relinquishment process. And I also represented hundreds of people who were in the process of adopting. Since I became the judge, now I do termination of parental rights for children for which an adoption petition has been filed. That's what gives you jurisdiction to go to the probate court, is you need to file an adoption petition, and then if one of the parents won't consent to the adoption, but you feel there are grounds to terminate parental rights, you can file that in the probate court and have that hearing before the probate judge. And then when that process is complete, then you have your finalization. The other thing that I do most of now, and which most of you would be interested in, is we do all the finalizations for kids who are in DCF custody. So foster parents who want to adopt their children, their foster children, would be ultimately coming to the probate court for that finalization. And so what we want to talk about today is what you might expect in that process, what you need to do to get ready, and what might happen. The bottom line is that adoption finalization is a really happy, joyful time. It's a party, and you should expect it to go well and be a good time. There's a lot of paperwork that is involved in finalizing an adoption. Fortunately, the state of Vermont has contracted with Lund Family Center through Project Family, and they will help the foster families put together the adoption packet, which is an immense volume of paperwork. But Project Family people are great at doing it. They put the packets together, they send them to the court, and then we schedule, when I say we, I mean the courts will schedule your finalization. It should happen within 30 days of that paperwork being filed. All the courts are different. There's 14 different probate courts around the state, and you're going to go to the court generally in the county in which you're living. So each judge handles things a little bit differently, but that is the basic process everywhere. The main thing that you can do as a prospective adoptive parent is understand that there is a lot of paperwork that has to be filed with the court, and some judges are more particular than others about that paperwork to make sure that it's extra special, perfectly correct. So if the Lund or whatever Project Family people you're working with say, we need your divorce decrees, or we need your marriage licenses, or your marriage, whatever they ask you to get it, because you can't get your finalization until the packet is complete. And the adoption statute sets out a long list of paperwork that needs to be filed, and the court has to go through and check to make sure every single one of those things is filed. And if they're not filed, then whoever is filing on your behalf or with you needs to file a motion for a waiver of those papers. So the faster you want it to happen, the faster you need to get that paperwork together so that it can be filed. There isn't technically a home study because you've been home studied as foster parents, but there is what I call a home study that comes to the judge and is read by me very carefully, and I'm sure read by all the other judges very carefully before the hearing. And what that does is tell us information that we are interested in and want to know about the birth parents and the adoptive parents and the child himself or herself. And some kids come in, as you probably know by now, if you're already foster parents, with issues. They've been abused and they've been neglected, and they've got stuff that they bring to the hearing. So this paperwork tells me as the judge what I might expect when this child comes in. Little bitty kids, they don't really know what's going on. So they are happy and we're all happy. But older kids sometimes have issues about attachment to other siblings who aren't being adopted, or their birth parents. And so they might be a little bit conflicted about what's going to happen on this day. So I see my role as a judge is to make the child feel comfortable and happy and secure, and must make them understand on that day that this is their forever family, that nothing's going to ever take it away. This is there forever. We take a bunch of pictures. It's a short hearing. It's just really I sign the adoption decree, or whatever judge is handling it will sign the adoption decree. We sign another form that gets you a new birth certificate with the adoptive parents listed as the parents in lieu of the birth parents. And then a certificate is generally read that is just really an announcement, a public announcement that the child has been adopted. That's what happens really in the hearing. In some cases, the Lund home or whoever is handling your adoption is going to bring toys for the kids and flowers and presents, but that may be different. I know only what happens in Burlington. I don't know what happens in other parts of the state. That may not be everywhere. But the bottom line is the hearing won't be scheduled until all the ducks are in a row. And so that's the downside. The upside is once you get a hearing, you're home free. There shouldn't be any problems when you get to the hearing, and nothing to be nervous about. So just come to it and expect to have a good time. So in most instances, when the families come, they invite everybody when you come to the finalization. So we've had finalizations where there's 40 people crammed in the courtroom. Everybody comes in, everyone brings a camera, they feel like it's Princess Diana. Everyone takes lots and lots of pictures, and that's great. That's what we generally expect. Sometimes, however, the family will invite a member of the birth family. That is something that you would want to tell the judge in advance, especially if the child is feeling conflicted about their siblings weren't adopted, or they're not sure about exactly what's happening to them for whatever reason. It's good for the judge to know that. So when I come into the court, generally speaking, I'm expecting really happy people all the way around. The Lund home, whom I deal with, always tells me if there's a birth parent that's going to be in there. And then I tamp it down just a little bit to make sure that everybody's is at least accepting of what's happening, if not overjoyed. I'll give you an example of one thing that happened just last week. I was told in advance that this was a 14-year-old boy being adopted by some distant relatives, but the birth mother was going to be in the courtroom. That's fine. So I came out, and immediately he was turning around to look at his mother. He kept turning around to look at his mother. And I usually chat with the kids about what they like to do and what their hobbies are. I know this already from having read their home study, but it gives me something to talk to them about, and we'll talk about that. Then I ask them if they're ready to be adopted, if they're ready to have me do this. I don't put any pressure on them at all. If they don't want to say a peep, that's all fine too, but lots of times kids do want to talk, and they do want to talk about how they're feeling, or just that they're happy. Whatever it is they want to do, that's what we do. But in this particular case, this young boy kept turning around to his mom and turning around to his mom, and it was more awkward than many. So we worked it through, and it was fine in the ending, and it was a fine event. But it's good if you're going to invite a family member who was involuntarily terminated, for example. That's a little less joyful for them than it is for you. So you would want to make sure that the judge knew that that person was in there, and they could be respectful towards them, and not have it be quite such a raucous party. So when you're bringing your children to court for their final adoption day, it's important for them to know before they get there, if they're old enough to understand, that this is not the family court. It's usually a smaller court. It's going to be more informal. There won't be lots of lawyers in the room, and the judge will come and sit with them at the table usually, as opposed to being way up on the bench. That's not the same in every court. That's certainly how it is in Chittenden, and I think that's how it is in many of the other courts. So it's meant to be more intimate and happy. It's not the court that they've ever been in before. There would be no reason for them to have ever been there. Most people dress the kids up in adorable little outfits because there's going to be lots of pictures to be taken, but you don't have to. Some kids can sit still they really understand what's happening. They're very excited to be there. They want to sign the paper that we have them sign, that isn't a legal paper, but is something we have them sign that says that they know they're being adopted. And that they're great about it, and that's wonderful. The judge will probably talk to them and ask them some questions, but nothing serious and nothing scary. If the child has issues that would make it difficult for them to sit for even 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that's okay. It'll just speed the hearing up a little bit. In Chittenden, if kids come in and they're ADHD or they just can't sit still, we don't force them to sit still. They can wander about. Someone's got to keep an eye on them so they don't trip on wires and go behind the desk. But basically, they can wander around. So they don't have to be scared to come to court. It's really a happy occasion. We want them to be happy. We want the family to have a good time. And really just tell them that it's not, nobody's going to go to jail. Nobody ever has gone to jail from one of those hearings. We were just talking about what advice I'd give to parents from all the years of being adoptive parent and representing everybody on every side of the adoption triad would be. And I guess the one overriding thing I have noticed is that children are their own little individual selves. And as much as we as adoptive parents want to think that through our healthy, stable, nurturing environment, this child will be whatever it is we want them to be or envision them to be. And the reality is that that often isn't the case, that they come to us with their own issues often and pre-birth concerns and prenatal problems, and those things stay with them. And so the happiest families that I see are the families that can accept that child with love where he or she is, knowing that they may have some issues that are going to be lifelong issues. And just like the rest of us do, none of us are born and we're perfectly turn out to be what our parents want us to be. And some do and most don't. So I guess I would say that if you can just keep the open mind that you have as a foster parent, knowing that adoption is going to give the child permanency and security and the knowing that you're always going to be there for them, but it isn't going to make them overnight into the perfect child that may be the perfect child. But the issues will probably remain that you're experiencing now as foster parents. And just to know that security and love is really what it's all about, and that's what you want to strive for, more than having them be a ballerina because you were a ballerina or a rocket scientist or whatever you are.